Hello. If you are wondering what's the very least amount you can pay for car insurance, the answer is minimum liability coverage. But is that enough to truly protect you? Probably not. And that's what we're going to dig into today. Before we get started, I want to say if you want to start saving money on car insurance, you're going to want to head over to FreeAdvice.com. Your page is going to look like this. And over here on the left, it says auto insurance. So if you want to compare rates for auto insurance, that's where you're going to want to start. You're going to want to click on that. And then it's going to bring down here. You can see that there's an explanation for insurance. And then right down here, this orange button, compare rates. Compare rates, click on that. You're going to enter your zip code. They're going to ask you some questions and you can compare many insurance companies at one time. It saves you a lot of time and it's easy, it's free. So get started with that. Now going back to this, I'm using a CNBC article. What is liability car insurance? So to understand if the minimum coverage is enough for you, you need to understand what is liability coverage in the first place. So liability coverage protects you from the financial responsibility of paying for damage you do. Now, what is financial responsibility? I'm going to go to FreeAdvice.com to answer that question. You see here, a financial responsibility law requires you to prove you have enough money saved to pay for damages resulting from a car accident. States have financial responsibility laws, and in addition to that, almost every state requires that you have insurance because that is a easy, simple, straightforward way to prove that you can pay for damage that you do. Some places allow you to be self-insured, and in that case, you would have to have a bond of a certain amount, which is usually equal to what you'd be required to pay for liability coverage. Not many people do that. It does not make sense in those situations. Almost everybody chooses to pay for insurance because you have a relatively low monthly payment. You don't have to have a huge chunk of money just sitting in a bank account somewhere. And a lot of people are not even able to have that much money to be self-insured. And so insurance is just a way to prove that you can pay for damages that you do. So that is what that's how financial responsibility and liability car insurance go together. Liability car insurance proves that you have financial responsibility. And liability insurance covers bodily injury liability. So that would be if you cause a crash and the other party is injured, will cover their injury costs. And it covers property damage liability, which would be if you hit a car and damage it, it would pay to repair that damage. Or if you hit a fence or a pole or a house, your property damage liability will cover that. Now, is the minimum, here's the question, is the minimum requirement enough? I have here a list of what the minimum requirements are for bodily injury and property damage liability. So this is from the Insurance Information Institute. And you see here the state on the left, and then what is required by that state, the minimum requirements, bodily injury, property damage liability, those are going to be required in every state. And then you'll see some of them, like down here in Arkansas, you're going to see that it also has a PIP, personal injury protection. And so in states that are no fault states, each party in an accident is responsible for their own bodily injuries. Even if you are the victim, you are still responsible for carrying personal injury protection to cover your injuries. And you'll see here these numbers. Now, what do these numbers mean? 25, 50, 25. Okay, the first number is your bodily injury liability for one person. Your second number is your bodily injury liability for more than one person total. So if you have two people in an accident, your maximum here is 50, that middle number 50. That's if there was 5 people that were injured in the accident, still the maximum that level of coverage would cover is $50,000. If there's just one person, $25,000 is the max. Then this last number here is your property damage liability. Sometimes you'll see it as PDL or PD liability, and that will pay for the car. So let's just, to make this easy, let's just look down this list and see what numbers we have. Alabama here at $25,000, Alaska at $25,000, Arizona $10,000 for property damage liability. Scrolling down, we can see Hawaii $10,000. A few of these states, Idaho and Iowa, $15,000. There is just scrolling down here, looking at that last number, $25,000 is like the highest requirement. Is that enough? Is that enough? Well, considering that new cars are getting more and more expensive, if you crashed into a Chevy Suburban fresh off the lot, you could be responsible for $60,000, $70,000 of liability if you cause that Suburban to be a total loss. Your insurance coverage, if you have the minimum liability, is going to cover, depending on where you live, $10,000 of that, $25,000 of that, leaving you financially responsible for the difference. And that's likely way more than you're able to pay. Most people cannot afford to pay an extra $40,000 or $50,000 for liability. It's better to increase the amount of liability coverage that you have. And then going to the first 2 numbers where you have your bodily injury for one or more people, a major accident could lead to hospitalization, surgery, rehab. It could cost $100,000 easily. And so you can see these numbers, $25,000. I mean, that's going to be all right for a fender bender, but for a major accident, that is insufficient, and you will still be responsible for the difference. And so it's better to boost the amount of coverage that you have. To find that amount of coverage that you need at a good price, you're going to want to head over to FreeAdvice.com, enter your zip code and some information about your car, where you live, and it's going to generate a lot of different quotes for you. You can compare and consider switching to a company that has lower rates for your situation. Now, how much is liability insurance going to set you back? I have this graphic here with giving you the average. So you can see here, this in orange, those are your young drivers, your 16-year-olds. They're going to pay the highest rates of anybody. It's crazy, but they are the riskiest drivers, and that's why they have such high rates. Once you get to 30, 50 years old, your rates are just much lower. And you can see how the prices compare. Like with Geico, you're going to pay considerably less than you would with Allstate. And with State Farm, you're going to pay less than you would with Nationwide. But this just shows you an average, so you can get an idea of how much minimum coverage would cost. Now, the good news is that boosting that minimum coverage from what a state requires to what's actually adequate to protect your financial well-being doesn't cost that much money. That's why it's strongly recommended. In fact, some insurance companies start their coverage at about the $100,000 for a single person bodily injury liability, $300,000 for multiple injured people, and $70,000 for property damage liability. Some insurance companies, that is the lowest they offer, or the lowest that they advertise that they offer. And so it's better to have adequate insurance than not enough insurance. So this article by CNBC kind of explains what I've been talking about. Do you need it? Yes, you need it. You need liability insurance. It's required, and it's just a financially smart move to make. The question is, how much do you need? You need more than what is required. And it's not going to cost an extreme amount more to get adequate coverage, and it's going to protect your assets, both now and in the future, because if you're ordered to pay your liability, they could come out of your paycheck for the next 20 years. It's going to make it hard for you to build your retirement savings. And so having the proper insurance now will protect you, will protect your future. So head over to FreeAdvice.com, click on auto insurance, enter your zip code, and find the best deal on liability insurance for your situation.